Welcome everyone to this evening's event. I am Scott Edgar. I'm the Assistant Arts and Cultural Programmer at Belfast's Linenhall Library. For those of you unfamiliar with the library, we are the oldest such institution in Belfast, and we're the only library in Ireland that still generates a proportion of our income from membership. If you enjoy this evening's event, please visit our website, find out more about the library and more about how you can become a member. For now, like I said, we'll place everyone on mute. If you've got questions or comments for our guests this evening, please type them into the chat box and we'll get back to them at the end if time permits. To begin these events, I often tell you about a particular collection or archive at the Linenhall Library. Recent attendees to our events will have heard about the Northern Ireland Political Collection, or Theatre and Performing Arts Archives, our ever-growing Extraordinary Women Collection. But within these and other archives, there are many smaller stories and themes to be explored. And this evening, we will be looking at stories of hidden LGBT history in the Linenhall Library. We're joined by Dr. Richard O'Leary, a visiting scholar in history at Queen's University Belfast. He was the former coordinator of the LGBT Heritage Project in Northern Ireland. During that time, he, along with the Linenhall Library, co-founded the LGBT History Club. This group meets monthly and more information can be found on our website. Richard is also a performance storyteller and his latest solo show is due to open at the Mac Theatre in Belfast mid-November 2021. This show will be part of the Outburst Queer Arts Festival and is provisionally titled My Queer History of Northern Ireland. And so without any further ado, I will leave you in the capable hands of the master storyteller, Dr. Richard O'Leary.
Thank you very much, Scott, and thank you, Linenhall Library, for inviting me to contribute to this year's European Heritage Open Days. The theme for this year's Open Days is inclusion, exploring together our hidden history. And LGBT history has only recently begun to emerge from being hidden. Conventional historians and heritage institutions largely ignored our LGBT history and our stories. Fortunately, the stories of LGBT lives have not all been lost. This is partly in thanks to those LGBT persons who wrote about their lives in LGBT-friendly publications. Some of these publications are now part of the collection at the Linenhall Library called the Northern Ireland Political Collection. And within that collection, and you can view the catalogue online, you can see what they have, and you can also come in person to the Linenhall Library to consult the publications which I'm going to be drawing on tonight. So this is just a taster of some stories which I have personally selected from these publications for your information about LGBT heritage and enjoyment. We'll begin with Gay News. And Gay News was a fortnightly newspaper produced in England in the 1970s and 1980s and sold in Britain, Northern Ireland and the Republic. And the strapline on this edition, which is from 1982, is "The paper forbidden to the Irish." And you may be wondering, why does it say on top of this newspaper, "The paper forbidden to the Irish"? Is it that only unionists in Northern Ireland could read Gay News and that Irish nationalists couldn't consult it? No, what this refers to is that at this particular time, there was a ban in the Republic of Ireland on the importation of gay news. And there's a report about this ban on the page 4 of the newspaper. It says, "Gay news sneaks into Ireland." While the Republic's Censorship Board is vetting 3 recent issues of Gay News, the National Gay Federation in Dublin reports that customs officials' spot checks failed to find National Gay Federation usual consignment of our last issue. It was in Cork that customs officials first impounded subscriptions copies of Gay News. Peggy Garvey of the Irish Censorship Board would not tell us whether the copies had been seized for being indecent. She said, "I'm sorry, but I can't discuss the nature of the complaint." This front page of this issue is emblazoned with the headline, again, "The issue is censorship." And this is censorship in Britain. And there's a photo of a play which was staged in London at that time, a play called The Romans in Britain. By the way, the Romans in Britain isn't about Roman Catholics in Britain. It's about the original 4th century AD European Romans in Britain and their war with the native Celts. This play gave rise to an indecency complaint, and the indecency complaint was made by Mr. Ross Corn, who attended the play at the request of a Christian anti-gay campaigner called Mary Whitehouse. Gay News reported on the indecency trial and said, "Mr. Ross Corns watched the play from a seat about 90 feet away from the stage. He insisted he saw an actor who played the Roman soldier who approached the man who played the Celt, holding his penis in his hand as he approached his Celt," according to Mr. Roscoe. The defense lawyer for the play informed the witness that what he had seen was the man's thumb. So that's a front page story from Gay News 1982. But turning inside on page 4, T1, there's a listing for LGBT friendly venues in Britain and Ireland. And I am going to open up, and on page 41, there's listings for Northern Ireland. Belfast, pub. Europa Hotel, Whip and Saddle Bar, Great Victoria Street. It really was called the Whip and Saddle Bar, I'm not making this up. Disco, Carpenters Club, Long Lane. Women's Lesbian Feminist Group meets Tuesday 8 p.m. 4 University Street, which was also the meeting place for GaySoc, Gay Liberation Society, Thursday 8:15 p.m. Religious, Gay Christian Fellowship, P.O. Box 44, if you want to know where they meet. Portadown, that well-known Northern Ireland gay hotspot. Portadown, pub, Bodega, West Street, Friday and Saturday. So there was quite a bit to do if you are LGBT and looking for a night out in the north in the 1982. I should mention that this is my own personal copy of Gay News. Now, I wasn't the one, actually. This is from 1st to the 14th of April 1982. I wasn't the one who obtained it. I'm not that old. It was the property of my late husband. But I can add that individual gay men had to work out ways of obtaining a copy of Gay News. There's very few shops in Ireland were willing to stock it. And the previous generation of gay activists, notably Jeff Dudgeon and Brian Gilmore of the Northern Ireland Gay Rights Association, protested outside Gardner's newsagents on Botanic Avenue against this policy of newsagents not stocking our gay publications. So how did copies of this magazine ever make it into the collection of the Linnahall Library's collection? It wasn't because this or any library ever stocked it in Ireland. It was because individual gay activists preserved their own copies. And it appears from correspondence that I've seen that older gay activists like Sean McGowan and Terry Dave McFarland, I think Terry's in the audience tonight, deposited a large number of copies of Gay News within the Linnahall Library. So it's thanks to older activists that you can consult these publications today. Here's another copy of Gay News. This is from 1980, and there's a small strapline which you can't see, which says the world's largest circulation newspaper for homosexuals. The date means that this copy is from 2 years before same-sex relationships were partially decriminalised in Northern Ireland. And the front page of this particular edition has a photograph, and it says underneath the photograph, marchers take their protest to the top, 10 Downing Street. This copy is quite faint, so I haven't projected the image. But when I look more closely at the photograph, I realize that I know one of the people in it. It's our own Jeff Dudgeon. And there's more about why Jeff Dudgeon is outside number 10 Downing Street in 1980 on page 3 of, no, sorry, it's not that type of newspaper, okay? But I say Jeff Dudgeon's on page 3. It's just news about Jeff Dudgeon, okay? And on page 3, it describes how some of the marchers at London Gay Pride in 1980, including Jeff Dudgeon, handed in a petition to the British Prime Minister. And the petition was asking the British government to change the law to end the criminalisation of male same-sex relationships in Northern Ireland. And in that photograph, and in the report, it mentions that Jeff is accompanied by Sheila McCaskill from Scotland, because same-sex relationships for men were also illegal in Scotland until 1980. And it was Jeff Dudgeon who took the legal case against the British government and then to the European Court of Human Rights, challenging the anti-gay law. Staying on page 3, there is a photo, a very small photo in black and white, of a man in a hat. A man in a lady's hat. A lady's hat with something metal sticking out of it. It says in the report on page 3, Carnival of Anger. Frank Egan, and by the way, Frank Egan is from Galway. Frank Egan, a member of the Brixton gay community, has been arrested for wearing in his hat, as part of his drag costume, a kitchen vegetable cutter. By the way, Frank, who's now dead, features in an exhibition currently running at the Epic Museum in Dublin about the LGBT Irish diaspora, and Frank Egan being one of those who was living in London in the 1980s. Now, you can see I've deliberately picked out some items that have Irish connections. Gay news is packed with national, international news, but I, or you, are not most interested in that news. I'm going to turn straight, well, obviously I'm not going to turn straight. I'm going to turn directly to page 25, to the page of personal contact ads. And these personal contact ads in publications like Gay News, they were used to wait for gay men to meet other gay men in the era before Grindr. So I'll read you out one here. Guy, interested in denim, Wellington boots, and leather, wishes to meet others aged 30 to 50 for friendship. Reply box 1953. So don't throw away your Wellington boots. You never know, someone might be interested in them, or you in them. But these person ads in the 1970s, it is also used by women looking for other women. And I was amused at the following notice, which is woman's personal. Are you bored with wheeling alone? If so, join Women on Wheels, the notorious Women's Motorbike Club. Write to Flat 6, 31, Sisters Avenue, London SW11. A woman's bikers club on Sisters Avenue. How appropriate is that? And that really is the address. I checked it out myself. And this takes me to another newsletter, which we'll find in an in-house collection. And it's a locally produced newsletter called Gay Star, which was the bulletin of the Northern Ireland Gay Rights Association. And here's a copy from September, October 1980. And The headline is Nigra Vindicated. And the front page report says, at the Belfast Coroner's Court on the 24th of September 1980, a jury returned an open verdict on Anthony Cleaver, who was found dying outside the fire station on Chichester Street, Belfast on June the 30th, 1979. The McLeave family, together with Nigra, Northern Ireland Gay Rights Association, fought a lengthy battle to get the Royal Ulster Constabulary to withdraw their press statement that Anthony's death was accidental. Depositions prove without doubt that Anthony had been cornered by a gang and beaten. Our efforts were vindicated by the verdict, which could so easily have been one of accidental death, and the snuffing out of a gay person would to the world and his murderers have passed undetected. On page 7, there is an obituary for another member of our LGBT community in 1980. It's an obituary for Wilma Creeth, which I'll now read out. Wilma died suddenly on August 24th, 1980, during the final stage of an operation. Wilma had been born male and had grown up as William Creeth, and as a man had married and had children. However, from her earliest recollections, she had had the feeling that all was not as it should be, that she was inside a woman. Wilma was to discover that she was one of those people to whom the medical profession applies the label transsexual. For a long time, she endured the strain of living as a man, but finally, over the age of 40, she could bear the strain no longer, and she began the long and difficult process of physically changing to what she felt was her true sex. It was a courageous decision, requiring great perseverance and endurance to fulfill. She also decided that rather than take the easy route of going away and starting a new life elsewhere, she would stay in Northern Ireland. Let's look at another edition of Gay Star, and this is the edition from summer 1981, with the headline, Inauguration of the Pleasure Dome. And it reads, if anyone has been wondering why Gay Star has not appeared for such a long time, it is because Jeff Dudgeon, our leading investigative journalist, has been too busy making news to write about it. Not content with single-handedly taking on the might of the British Empire at Strasbourg, he is going into business as a nightclub manager. This doing his bit to brighten up the centre of Belfast. And believe me, in the 1980s, troubles Belfast, the city could do a bit of brightening up by a gay nightclub. The club is called after Edward Carpenter, the closest thing we have to a pioneer of gay liberation. You saw earlier from Gay News that the Carpenter Club was mentioned as one of the gay venues in 1982. On page 2 of this edition of Gay Star, there's a report on a gay conference in Cork. We're going to hear a lot about Cork tonight, and that's my personal preference. But in my defense, I should say that the first librarian at the Linden Library in the 1790s was from Cork, was Thomas Russell. He, of course, was a rebel and was hanged. I don't intend to be hanged tonight. But anyhow, there's a report by Sean McGorn, who's from Belfast, and there's a one-time editor of Gay Star. I don't know if Sean with us tonight. I alerted him to this event, and I certainly wish him well. Maybe he'll watch this recording. But the report by Sean is headed Gay Conference in Cork by Sean McGorn. Cork City is full of handsome buildings and broad, well-kept streets. It is also full of unattractive buildings and narrow, badly paved streets. The Friday evening session, the warm-up, was very pleasant, with films and a video, and the video was not blue. that was when one first noticed an unusually large number of physically handicapped people. It might have only been 2 or 3, but that is unusually large for any gay venue in this island, something we should think about. Also on this page, in this edition, there's a second report, headed Gay Conference in Cork, A Woman's View by Sharon. At the National Gay Conference in Cork, May the 15th to 17th, 1981, women were in the minority. Around 50 women attended, and of these, a few were straight feminist women who had come to give the lesbian women support. Throughout the conference, the women had separate workshops from the men. The reasons being the different nature of the oppression suffered by gay men and gay women, and the fact that many gay men are extremely sexist. In 1989, I'd been told by my friend Sheila Hamilton that there was an Irish feminist magazine produced in Belfast, and that many lesbians contributed to it. It was called Women's News, and you can consult copies of Women's News in the Linden Hall's collection. In fact, some of the issues have been digitized to make it even easier for you to consult them remotely. And last year during lockdown, when I was working as the coordinator of the LGBT Heritage Project, which I left it in May, and it's now in the capable hands of my successor, Mary Ellen. But during that time, I directed some of the project volunteers to spend some of their time looking at women's news. And I'm delighted now to give you a short break from me and to pass you over to one of those Heritage Project volunteers, Siobhan O'Mahony, to tell you more about women's news. Over to you, Siobhan.
Thanks, Richard. Okay, so I'm trying to see myself on screen there. So I've got 2 issues of women's news just to briefly about, one of which is from it's the May-June issue from 1989, issue 42. This is the issue itself. Sorry, I can't see myself on speaker view there. So it's a picture, a statue, censored. See the entire statue there. Should be quite familiar to anybody from or who has been to Belfast or been to the Great Northern Mall. It is a statue created by the artist Louise Walsh called The Unknown Woman Worker, Monument to the Unknown Woman Worker. And as part of the history group last year, I dug into this a lot more with thanks to Women's News. The article, this is before the statue was actually created, when the brief had actually been submitted. So it's a statue cast in bronze, situated outside Great Northern Mall on Great Victoria Street, adjacent to the Europa Hotel. It depicts 2 working class women with symbols of women's oppression of low paid work embedded, such as scrubbing brushes, a typewriter, shopping basket, baby's dummies and nappy pins, telephone, cash register, etc. The article about the censorship, this statue basically created a lot of controversy within council chambers at the time, because the artist had rejected the original brief, which she felt was offensive to women, where the statue was to be created as monument to the nearby Amelia Street red light district, so for prostitution. So in this article itself, Louise Walsh, the artist from Cork, well-known lesbian artist, is quoted as detailing her vision and the ethos around the piece after the brief had been submitted, and she actually won the competition to actually create the piece. So she's quoted as saying, "It's a dedication to the women who work for next to nothing in all walks of life, unseen and unappreciated, for valor above and beyond the call of duty." So it was originally commissioned by the Department of Environment in the late 1980s. Eventually, her design was accepted by the project landscape architect and the Art and Public Places Research Group, but it was opposed by the Belfast Development Office and Belfast City Council. In fact, it led to the longest debate in the City Council's history, I'm told, but thankfully it was recommissioned by the private developer, Glenbank Estates Limited, who own the Great Northern Mall, which is why it has been erected there since 1992. I personally feel it's a striking monument to feminism and women's rights from a renowned lesbian artist who took a bold stance in the face of mounting ignorance of the arts from the bureaucracy of the time. Louise herself had said just last year when we were kind of covering this piece as an LGBT history places of pride video, she was delighted to have it included as a place of pride and said she'd always looked on it as a covert dyke piece being two women connected. So she was happy from that aspect of it. So that's that piece. The second magazine I can go on to you about is from 2003. This is issue number 143 of Women's News. So that's the Women's News version. And we actually have two for the price of one here because they coincided with Link in Cork, the Lesbian and Bisexual Women's Organisation and Resource Centre, to actually produce their magazines in tandem with the theme of North and South. So these are a great read, and there's contributions from Belfast-born women who have moved to Cork and vice versa. You have the likes of Marie Mulholland, Ruth McCarthy did some artwork in the Women's News. There's a lot of photographs. You can see if you can see there, the cover includes a picture. There's photos from 1980s feminism demos. So that was obviously one. I think Marie Mulholland is possibly at the front of that one, front and center. So lots of pieces and articles, serious pieces and humorous pieces. There's an article in the Belfast in the Women's News, one by Paula Keenan, giving her take on moving to Cork as a bar dyke and finding her way being from Belfast and landing up in Cork and trying to find out where all the women were and hung out and stuff. So both of those issues, I was delighted to see these when I went through the archive. There's a whole collection of physical Women's News magazines kindly donated by Dr. Margaret Ward, who was one of the original founders of Women's News. That's doing the rounds. So it's basically an amazing organisation, an amazing collective that ran, pardon me, from the mid-80s up to 2010. And the LGBT history group, Women's News subgroup, actually did a presentation with a broader detail on Women's News last March for the Museum of Free Derry as part of the Outing the Past Festival. And that is available on YouTube with a link that I will stick in the chat box if anybody wants to find out more about Women's News. It was broken down, just an introduction, how long they ran, who was involved, the grassroots activism aspect of it, all sorts really. It was really interesting. What year was the joint Women's News link issue, Orla? That was 2003. And they did refer to a previous collaboration in 1986 with the Women's Place before Link was actually created. So apparently they had collaborated twice from North-South point of view. So I will pop that link into the chat for anybody who's interested in seeing. Number one, the LGBT volunteer presentation for Outing the Past about Women's News.
Great, Siobhan. Thank you very much.
And the video about Louisa's statue as well.
And I think this also shows that if you want to find out more about lesbian and bi women's history, that you can turn to a broader feminist magazine like Women's News, and within that publication, you will find some of these stories. So thanks, Siobhan, for giving us a taster. I'm now going to go back to another local publication, which was a newsletter which was a successor to Gay Star, which was edited by Sean McGord and called Upstart. And again, this is my own copy from 1989, but you'll find copies in the Lindenhall Library. And it's called An Independent Magazine for Gay Women and Men in Northern Ireland. And this edition on page 3 has a column called On the Town. And it says, on Monday nights, there is a disco in the limelight on Ormo Avenue from 9 p.m. to 1 a.m. I actually remember those Monday night discos in limelight. They were fabulous. That was also the only time that I knowingly attempted pole dancing, but there's no report of that in Upstart. But the reason I've chosen this particular issue of Upstart is because there was an advert in it, and the advert was one that said, the first lesbian cartoon book to be published in Ireland, a dangerous, daring and hilarious glimpse into Belfast's lesbian life. Available by mail order from Just Books, 7 Wine Tavern Street, Belfast. So spotting this ad in Upstart, I went off and I ordered my copy of Sappho Woman and the Greater Belfast Dykes, which it says is written by Gay May Kincaid, which is not their real name. And on the cover of this publication, there's a Sappho woman in her pink Superwoman outfit, and she's flying over Belfast City Hall and wearing her Superwoman pink cape. It's a cartoon animation series, you know, which have been appearing in Women News and I put together. And given a taste of it on page 4, there's also a cartoon, then says, we can all rest assured that whenever there's a dyke in distress, a feminist in a flurry, a woman in a worry, and a lesbian in deep shit, Sappho Woman will be there. So my friend at the time, Belfast Sheila Hampton, we had a great laugh over Sappho Woman, but in 1990, it still had to remain our secret. And I was delighted that 30 years later, in May 2019, I was in the Linen Hall Library, and they had an exhibition in the foyer, and the exhibition was from the archives of the library, and it was called Women in the Archives. And for that exhibition, the Linen Hall had retrieved from its archives its own copy of Sappho Woman, the Greater Belfast Dykes, which you can now consult in the library. And if you look more closely, you'll see that she's flying over Belfast City Hall, but the banner over the Belfast City Hall says, Belfast says, wow, which is a contrast to the real 1989 Belfast banner, which said Belfast says no, but Sappho Woman said Belfast says wow. And I'm delighted to tell you that I have someone in the audience who appears in the cartoon strip Sappho Woman and the Greater Belfast Dykes, and that is Heather Fleming. So Heather, if you are there and reveal yourself, you can tell us a little bit more about that publication.
Okay. Hi, Richard. Hi, everybody. I think I'm unmuted. Yep. Yes, I didn't realize that I had appeared in it. I was merrily reading it, having no clue whatsoever that one of the characters was in fact based on me. And in 1990, for my 30th birthday gift, Jill, who wrote the book, she gave me a lovely gift of 2 drawings based on the character. So I'll show you the drawings. I'll show you one first. The 2 of them are in the same thing here. So you can see that okay. That's one there. Sorry, there's a lot of reflection. You can see the character's face, just sort of quite hippy-dippy and quite nice. And it says, Viola Nice Posy tells us, you know, a lot of women approach me and say I look uncannily like Heather Fleming. And I say to them, F off, you evil bastards. So quite a change in character there. We never saw this character in the book. We did see a lot of this nice one. And she also wrote on it, Best of birthdays, Heather, honey. Loads of hugs and kisses and unsavory thoughts. Love, Jill, Jackie, and Jean. So that would be very typical of the sort of thing Jill would do. And when I thought about it, I thought I had kind of recognized one of the characters, Millie Tent. I thought, oh, I think I know she might be loosely based on a friend of ours. I had no clue that Viola Nice Posey was based on me. So
thank you very much, Heather, for bringing that additional piece of LGBT heritage to our attention. And that won't be your last appearance tonight, so stay tuned. I'm going to continue now with another publication which you can find in the Lynn Hall collection, which is, you need to mute yourself and then it'll come back to me, is the Gay Community News. And I'm going to show you, Gay Community News was the longest running queer newspaper in the South, established by Tony Walsh and Catherine Glendon in 1988, and it's still in existence. I'm going to show you a copy. Scott, should it be coming up as my face on the screen, because I want to show you. Yeah, that's it. Fine, good. Yeah, that's us. And this is Gay Community News from January 1989, and it's got the headline historic decision. And it says, both houses of the Oireachtas for the first time passed a measure granting rights to homosexuals, the Prohibition of Incitement to Hatred Bill. And it reports that Senator David Norris described an incident when he happened upon the early stages of a well-planned attack on the Hirschfield Centre, the gay community centre. So that's information about why we needed legislation on the prohibition of incitement to hatred. But notice this was 1989, and it was still another 4 years before same-sex relationships for men were partially decriminalised. But it was a start. Now turning inside to page 4 of Gay Community News, there is a report called Many Parts of the Northern Upstart. And it's a report by a Southern-based writer for Gay Community News, Jonathan Wallace, who says, Jonathan Wallace paid a visit to Belfast to interview gay activist Sean McGowan and to get a flavour of gay life in the northern capital. Sean met me at the station, a 42-year-old man with a grey beard, unremarkably dressed. We walked down the Albert Bridge to the city centre. The streets in this shopping area bustled moderately by Dublin standards, but enough to show that commercial life in the city has improved greatly with the reduction in bombing. Sean told Jonathan, young people in particular are confined to living with their parents. The DSS are loath to give rent assistance if you move from the parental home. With our high rate of unemployment, this is a serious hindrance to moving. And as you can imagine, it's not easy to bring your Catholic or Protestant boyfriend to meet your mother. So true, Sean, I know the feeling. The next page in this edition has a feature on Belfast lesbian line. And it reads, all go at Belfast lesbian line. Stressed and stimulated, volunteers talk to Maureen Tatlow about working in a lesbian collective. The phones are hopping on Thursday nights at Belfast lesbian line. The pre-Christmas rush is on. Heather, that's Heather Fleming, Heather muses, they come out of the woodwork at a tremendous rate at this time. They seem to notice now they're missing love, warmth, and relationship. 1990. And the reason I'm showing you this is the front page has a report on Walesa rants, eliminate gays. Polish Nobel Prize winner and Solidarity leader Lech Walesa has promised to eliminate moral undesirables, drug addicts, and homosexuals if he is elected to the presidency of his country. So just as we have in this decade upsurge of homophobia and transphobia in Poland, Gay Community News was already reporting about it over 30 years ago. Turning aside to page 4, there's an article written by Michael Dillon. Michael Dillon still lives in Dublin. I should mention that so many of the contributions to these newspapers were voluntary. It was done in the spare time of the contributors. In fact, the Gay Community News was free and available in gay pubs and some sympathetic, maybe left-wing oriented venues. This report on page 4 says Cooperation North Exchange. Cooperation North is an organisation some of you may be familiar with. It's currently called Cooperation Ireland, and it was set up to facilitate exchanges, interaction between Northerners and Southerners. So this report says, this year the National Gay Federation in Dublin and the Northern Ireland Gay Rights Association are undertaking a series of exchange weekends through the offices of Cooperation North. The idea behind the exchange is to foster links between the two communities, North and South. To this end, 3 members of the NGF travelled to Belfast and met with members of NIGRA, Northern Ireland Gay Rights Association, Cara Friend, and others at a drop-in centre on Saturday afternoon. This was after a marathon shopping spree at the flashy new Debenhams, Boots the Chemist, all those little necessities, and not one, but 2 next stores just yards apart. Now that's decadence. So I think I'll conclude there, having just given you a taste of these various publications and some of the stories that you'll find there as an introduction to our LGBT heritage, which I invite you to contact or visit the Lindenhall Library if you have more curiosity. But Scott and Siobhan and I will be here for another a few minutes to maybe address any questions that you have in the chat. So thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Yeah, so if anyone has any questions or anything anything you'd even like to contribute, or any stories or things that you have, just either pop them in the chat window, or you can just take yourself off mute, and I'm sure Richard will be happy to chat to you.
Yeah, I can see there's 2 items in the chat. Egan from Cork has drawn to my attention that Gay News newspaper listed Le Chateau Bar in Cork as gay friendly, and says that the owner heard about this and barred the gays from the bar. That wouldn't be the first time that has happened. Dave McFarlane has said to me that these copies of Gay News came from the library in the Carpenter Club via the home of the late P.A. McLaughlin. So we're very thankful to PA for holding on to them and for handing them over. If anyone has a question, you can also raise their hand or just speak up as well. There's Dave. Hi, Dave.
Hi, Richard. Just going to say is outside London, as far as I'm aware, with the exception of about 1 or 2 copies, we've got the only full set of gay news in the UK.
That's very important to have such a complete set. I know a few issues have been digitized, but to have that set there is tremendous.
And the Gay Star, there was Upstart, there was Update, and Niagara News, about 5 or 6 different magazines all during that time. Not only reported the news, did reviews, magazines, books, films, but also were involved with the various campaigns, including getting the LGBT Film Festival across into GFT. So it was quite, I mean, a lot of things went on and a lot of people put their efforts into the magazine. Long nights at 1 o'clock and 2 o'clock in the morning.
Well, I know it was very much appreciated by people at the time, but also it's a great source of information about as I said, how much was happening and the diversity of film reviews, book reviews, news, contact ads. They're very varied publications.
Very. A lot of context in it which aren't there anymore as well. I'll hand on and let you go on someone else.
Thank you. Some nice comments coming in. Thank you for the nice comments. I mean, some of the publications are also available, of course, in the Public Records Office of Northern Ireland.
Just while everyone has been very unusually quiet for a Friday evening, Richard, what was it that drew you to the archives at the Linen Hall Library?
Well, I do think it, the newspapers and newsletters are a great source of information if we're doing any work on LGBT history, and I also like to be able to consult hard copies. So I didn't realize the Linen Hall Library had as many as it does, it's also quite easy to access material, and of course it's a very attractive physical building as well. To spend time in. You can combine it being a pleasant environment and getting a lot of reading done. Though it will be helpful if more material is digitized, because of course people can access it remotely. You'd like the option of being able to do it both ways. I have a smaller number of of my own personal copies, but it's quite convenient when you're telling stories as well, because someone else put in a question. I know I want to come across any about the asexual community on your travels. No, I haven't, and it's worth bearing in mind that these publications are of their time. So for example, gay news was disproportionately about gay men, and you can also see in terms of, like Gay Star was called the Bulletin of the Northern Gay Rights Association, but later on we see Upstart being referred to as a publication for gay women and men. Even the terminology gay women, was more popular than it would be now, and the terminology around trans persons was less developed, and sometimes there was a conflation of being TV and trans. So you will, and the awareness of asexual would have been less. So when you approach these publications from the 70s or 80s, you'll have to bear that in mind, that these were generally progressive people, but even within their own time, we would now say that our awareness and insights and terminology has moved on since then. So someone has put in a question, any suggestions what we should now be collecting as the base for future LGBT archives? It strikes me that so much now being digital, it'll be even more important to preserve this kind of material. I agree with you. I mean, I'm old school insofar as I still buy and read hard copies of newspapers, and I still cut out and keep a no-fashion scrapbook. So the thing to do is, of course, is to, I suppose, preserve things in multiple formats. But I've been in the habit, for many years, of holding on to physical flyers and posters and that, which are part of my own personal collection. But LGBTQ people now, there's nothing stopping them from also holding on to physical objects and not just relying on digital records, because I can tell you from personal experience, 20 years won't long be coming around, and your current material will soon be historic. So yes, hold on to it, and obviously if you've got something older, you can approach institutions like Tony, Ulster Museum or Linnenhall, depending on their particular area of interest, may be able to take some of that material from you. Right, let's yeah, or Egan from Cork, LGBT Archive, says we need to be capturing our history as we make it. That is correct. And also events like these are a helpful way of bringing people together and sharing. For example, it was tonight we had the first opportunity to see the drawing that Heather showed to us. So I think all these gatherings are opportunities for what I call intergenerational transmission of information and history. And actually lockdown has been very good, because we've had also the LGBT History Club, and it's been quite a good way of bringing people together, including, I know we've got some guests from Dublin, Edmund Lynch, who's been obviously recording history in video and film. People do it in a great many different ways. Good, yeah. Someone said they've learned more about LGBT history. That's exactly what we're about. Good. Scott, I think this crowd have been drinking before they came on. That's what it is. I mean, I'd say if we did some remote breathalyzer tests, we'd find them all out.
Well, luckily that is something that we can't check through Zoom, but I'm sure there will be many more conversations to come off the back of this. And if you this video will be going up on YouTube, and you'll be able to leave comments and kind of continue a conversation and chat under that, or look up any of our speakers on social media or their web profiles. I would just like to say just before we go that the Linenhall Library are undertaking some big digitization projects over the next years. So we do hope to digitize a lot more of our archives. We're currently working on the Extraordinary Women archive, so there will be a lot of stuff from particularly feminist publications and things like that. That will be digitized this year, and then we'll be moving forward through other archives. I'd encourage you all to come into the library. The last time I met with Richard there, he was particularly enamored by our new red velvet thrones in the cafe. So if any of you want to come in and have a chat and a nice cup of coffee in a really cool environment, it's worth popping in. I'd like to thank Richard and also Siobhan and Heather for their contributions this evening. I'd like to thank all of you who registered and came along on a Friday night. We couldn't run these events without your support. Like I said, I extend an invitation to you all to come to the library, check out our archives, check out the cafe, visit the website linenhall.com. If you can't get into the building, you can view upcoming program of events, browse some of our digital collections, find out more about becoming a member. All that's left for me to say is enjoy the rest of your Friday evening. Have a great weekend, and I hope to see you all again soon. Thank you.